The young girl whimpered as she began to crawl away. Sweat trickled down her forehead, mixing with the tears upon her cheeks, blending into the perfect cocktail of sorrow and desperation. Her bloodied nails tear at the dirt-covered floorboards, wrists still red and raw from the bonds she finally broke free of. She doesn't know where she's going, doesn't know the way out, yet that primal instinct inside her told her to fight, told her to break free, to escape. It drives her forward, emboldens her with a strength greater than she ever knew she could muster. She just wants to get home, get back to her parents, get back to her bed. She knows they are probably worried sick about her. All the whilst her hatred for the man who took her burns like an inferno within. She knows her friend is still tied up in the other room, but she doesn't have time to go back. She will have her revenge. She will make sure he suffers. But right now, she needs to escape, needs to get help for her and her friend. Her vision keeps fading. The blood-matted hair clings to her face as the pounding in her head intensifies with every movement she makes. How stupid she feels to have so willingly gone inside a stranger's house. She gags as she holds back the urge to vomit, forcing herself with all her might not to cough, for she knows if she does, she is sure to scream. She can feel multiple of her ribs are broken. This is the most important thing, not to make a noise, not to let him know she has broken free. She can see the light of freedom piercing through the cracks around the door. She can't let him know she is so close. She has come so far. She has nearly beaten him. She will make him pay. If she only knew. I left her ropes loose on purpose. What's the fun of a new toy if you can't play with it?
That weird kind of feeling. It was Halloween. The village was covered in decorations, and I'd prepared enough candy to feed an entire school. It was about 6 in the evening when the first group of kids started to make their way down the road. Some of my neighbours were still making those last-minute adjustments to their houses, whilst others tucked themselves away behind cars ready to jump out and scare anyone who got close enough. There was a huge deal of pageantry about it in my village, and I loved it. Then there was the guy across the street, with just a single poorly carved pumpkin perched upon his doorstep. I guess some people make more of an effort than others. Who am I to judge? After 3 or 4 hours, the trick-or-treaters had all but gone home, with the exception of a few stragglers. You know, parents who'd been working late and had only just made time to take their kids out, and those few groups of teenagers more intent in causing trouble and messing about than actually trick-or-treating. But it was the guy across the road. I swear he invited the first couple of kids that came to his door inside. Then, nothing. Maybe he just got annoyed with them and decided not to do it anymore. But it was weird. All the lights in his house were off. The only sign of life was that singular dying flame of that poorly carved pumpkin. I would have thought it was someone he knew, but it just seemed off to me. I just had that weird kind of feeling about it. This feeling lingered with me. Several times over the next few hours I heard the passing of police sirens as they took off down the road. Each time I would get up from my sofa and check outside the front window just to see if anything was going on. But as soon as they passed, silence resumed as normal. I jumped up. The noise came from outside. I darted to the window to see what was going on. In the ever-darkening night, I could see the silhouette of the guy across the road. A short, fat figure, shadowed in darkness. He'd knocked over his rubbish bins whilst carrying something down the drive. I checked the time on my watch. it had just gone past 12 o'clock. I stood there, continuing to stare, trying to keep myself as hidden from view as possible as I watched him scramble to the floor and pick up the bundle he'd dropped. Slowly but surely, he opened the boot to his car and tossed whatever it was into the back, his overweight form clumsily shuffling around to the driver's seat before squeezing himself inside, hardly pausing before starting up the engine and driving away. I kind of just stood there for a moment, not really sure of what had just happened. Dude was a weird one for sure, but I couldn't shake this feeling. Normally, I wouldn't care what people do. They have their own lives. But in that moment, I decided to take a look. Heck, I felt crazy even just thinking about it. But what harm could it do? Just run across the road, check out his house, and get back before he gets home. I snapped up my phone and my keys and poked my head out of the front door, taking a cursory glimpse up and down the road to make sure there was no one about. With the road now completely empty, I slipped outside into the cool night air. Alarm bells in my head started to ring as I began to make my way up his driveway. In the eerie silence of the night, I could hear the faint and muffled sounds of moans. A shiver ran down my spine as I moved closer to the window. Did he leave the TV on? No, there were no lights at all. The moaning, albeit still faint, grew louder the closer I got. It was when I pressed my face to the window, in the subtle glow of the moonlight, I saw a pair of legs stretched across the floor. The rest of the person they were attached to were obscured from view behind a sofa, but I could see them moving. I tapped at the window, and that's when the panicked moans and cries really started to begin. I was shaken. I didn't know what to do. I tried to shout for them to calm down as I ran to the front door, hammering on it, desperately shaking the handle trying to open it. People were starting to come out of their houses now. Worried faces peered through windows as others started to run over. I tried to kick down the door, but to no avail. The thing was heavy and locked tight. I grabbed my phone and began to call the police as a couple of guys came over and demanded to know what was going on. I didn't have time to deal with them right now. I just pointed to the window. In turn, I witnessed each of them realize the gravity of the situation as their faces mirrored mine from a mere moment ago. As the crowd began to swell, I started shouting down the phone to the police to try and convey what was going on. A scream pierced through the night air like a knife as I saw a group huddled round the bins towards the bottom of the drive. I made my way to them, circled by horror-stricken onlookers. Was the tattered remnants of a child's bloodstained Halloween costume, and a couple of very small, severed fingers. The police ultimately arrived and broke down the door. After several excruciating minutes, officers escorted out the young girl who was still bound. Poor thing was white as a ghost, disheveled and bloody, but she was intact. They still haven't found the guy from across the road, or the other young girl. Just a series of sick notes he wrote as he... Those poor girls. The Halloween hanging. I can remember the screaming. I can remember everyone running. The stampede of parents dragging their children away as others ran towards the house. I remember my dad picking me up in his arms and beginning to run home as fast as he could. That was the last time we ever went trick-or-treating, and it wasn't till much later my parents told me why. And now, I'll tell you. I am, and always have been, the biggest fan of Ghostbusters. So for me, when October came around, and everything was about ghosts and ghouls, I was in paradise. Now, Halloween's not the biggest thing in the UK, but in my village, everyone seems to go nuts for it. People really make an effort. cobwebs, hanging ghosts, fake tombstones. The village looked like something out of a cheesy horror movie. So, just like the previous few years, 8-year-old me was dressed up in his homemade Ghostbusters uniform, and off me and Dad went ready to get all of the candy we could. It couldn't have been that long though before we came across a crowd beginning to gather at the entrance of a private road. It was getting pretty dark outside, but Dad must have thought it was okay, so off we went to check it out. The house was intense. A small bungalow tucked away down a winding path, decorated entirely with hanging figures. All of them different shapes and sizes, each one decorated in its own unique way, yet all supporting the same brown sack shrouding their faces. They just hung there, motionlessly, occasionally swaying in the gentle breeze. Now that I think about it, it's grotesque, but back then I was in awe. There was a line of kids queuing up to grab sweets from a bowl on the doorstep, but the parents seemed far more interested in the decorations, some of them taking pictures, others of them trying to figure out what they were made of. After giving me an approving but apprehensive nod, Dad let me join the line with all of the other kids as he went to speak to a neighbour. The line was getting shorter and shorter. It was merely my turn. The bowl looked like it was overflowing with sweets. And then I heard the screaming. It was pretty much a blur from then. Those who weren't running were trying to dismantle the decorations. Someone barged past me and started banging on the door to the bungalow. I think in that moment though, I was more upset that I dropped my candy when Dad picked me up. As far as things went, after that, there was no more Halloweens, no more trick-or-treating. I never really pressed the topic from then onwards. It was always a bit taboo, and it wasn't until I was 18 and about to go off to university that my parents actually told me the story. A lonely old man just lost it. He spent the last month attacking strangers at night, kidnapping some, killing others, taking them back home and, well, yeah. 13 people were found hung that night. 13. What's worse, 3 kids died over the following few days. Yeah, that's right. If it wasn't bad enough, the nutjob decided to dip all of the candy in rat poison and just leave them on his front porch for anyone to take, while he himself laid cold and dead in his bathtub, wrists slit and overdosed on over-the-counter medication. What haunts me the most though is there was no motive. No reasoning, no history of mental illness. Okay, the guy was old and alone, but he wasn't disliked. I guess it just goes to show you that some things aren't what they seem. I don't tend to think about it much nowadays, but every time Halloween comes around, I can't quite get it out of the back of my head. When I see those decorations and those figures swinging there, I get a chill.